Hello, my name is Otaviano Canuto. I am an executive director at the World Bank, and today I'm here to talk to Veronica Ramcharan. Veronica works at the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. She has a bachelor in information systems and management and a master's in business administration, specialized in finance. And she's another brilliant young professional that I have met and from whom I think we can learn a couple of things here. So, Veronica, why did you decide to work at the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, central banks, they have a responsibility to promote macroeconomic stability. So previously I was an investment analyst handling almost $1 billion in assets. But there was no real contribution to my country per se. And I know central bank, I kind of use the analogy that it's the CPU, central processing unit of a computer, whereas the economy is your monitor. So whatever the policies and decisions are made, it's reflected there in your economy. And I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to make a difference to my country and to be able to provide some benefit to my country. And I think that was probably my main driving force for wanting to work at the central bank.
Great. So as you can see, it's possible to conciliate your personal aspirations with the career path that one may choose. And there are many ways by which this can be accomplished. And you may note my tie. My tie is a symbol of Trinidad and Tobago. So we are all Trinidad and Tobago today. Veronica, you and I working on a piece about de-risking and loss of correspondent banking relationships, a problem that has afflicted particularly small states, in particular the Caribbean states where you come from. So tell us a bit about, well, why you felt motivated to work with me on this, and what are, let's say, the main takeaways that you would say come directly from our work?
Well, the reason that I think that was an important issue for us to work on was because small state countries, especially in the Caribbean, or small states in general, their voice needs to be amplified. It's not as if they're a huge country and they can go in and say, well, okay, I need this done and whatnot. So it's either they come together as an aggregate or they have someone there to amplify their voice. The de-risking issue came up a couple of years ago. They have been talking about it, trying to get the multilateral institutions, financial institutions to take notice of it, that it was happening. Initially, there was a denial that it was actually happening. There was responses that you were getting that there's no evidence of this happening. Eventually, fine, with enough work being done, they said, fine, there's evidence of it. And then they said it was due to AML CFT deficiencies and these kinds of things. So there was no work specifically being done to address the issues, just everyone was drawing conclusions. The issue that these countries were having is that they're telling these institutions, yes, we have AML CFT issues, but this is not the primary cause. We need someone to come in and look, someone to speak to the regulators, speak to the financial institutions we do business with. But no one is willing to do it. So the work that we did, I think, pitched that into a greater forum and allowed organizations and institutions to see that this was not just a mere small states issue. This was an issue that if left untreated, you were going to leave economies in economic isolation. You would have a form of backwardation, whereas you're aiming for globalization now, but whereas this is causing financial exclusion. So what we did in terms of that piece was to bring it to the forefront, and it worked well. And I think the main things that came out of our work was that they saw it is not an AML CFT issue only. I mean, yes, it may play a part in it, but it had a lot to do with regulatory ambiguities. It had a lot to do with the profitability, operations, those sorts of things. You know, the margins of profits and just lack of clarity in terms of guidelines that needed to be followed. So to this point, we don't have any clarity with regards to these things, but we have a more cohesive understanding that something needs to be done.
Right.
So these queries are not falling on deaf heads, so to speak, from these smaller countries.
Right. And Veronica, so that people have an idea, this is not simply a technical issue, because the consequences of these decisions to cut off correspondent banking relationships, big banks with small states, has led either to increased costs, for instance, in operating with these small states, when it comes to remittance, when it comes to other types of banking relationships, and they have consequence to the welfare of the population of these small states, simply because they're too small and they do not have the scale to make some of these activities profitable. Veronica, young as she is, but she has become an international reference on the subject, and she's often called to talk about the subject and to provide reviews on how to cope with this problem. Now, Veronica, you spent your last 2 years at the International Monetary Fund. What are the takeaways that you will say about this experience working at the board of the International Monetary Fund?
I think the main takeaways would be that you gain a global point of view. There's a holistic aspect now that you can piece things together. So coming from a small Caribbean country, you're working to develop your own economy. But when you're here now, you see the issues that affect all the other economies, how they link together, the synergies that can be formed when you operate in a globalized atmosphere, you know, the benefits of globalization on the whole. But then you also get to see the granularity of countries themselves, the specificities in terms of their own issues, what they have to deal with. And there's not a one fix for everything that will fix every problem. You know, things need to be done in such a way that takes into account the peculiarities of different countries. And this is something that is one of the main takeaways, that you can't just form a framework that will fix everything for one set of countries. You know, so you need to have, yes, there are benefits to doing things on a global level, but at the same time, you need to start at a granular level to be able to build into that.
Perfect. So this is Veronica Ramcharan, as I said, a brilliant young professional who's very close to returning back to Trinidad and Tobago, a 1 million inhabitant country, an island that is in itself extremely important in the region, for the whole Caribbean, and a very beautiful place. And I suggest you all, I recommend a trip to Trinidad and Tobago. It's worth it. That's why I'm wearing this tie. And thank you very much, Veronica.
Thank you for having me.